The Amazon never sleeps. Beneath its emerald ceiling of leaves, life pulses in a constant rhythm, soft paw steps, wings slicing the air, rain tapping ancient trunks, whispers of things seen but not understood. It's a world both teeming and hidden, where the predator's silence is as loud as the howler's cry. And in the darkest parts of it, where sunlight barely reaches and humans almost never tread, a jaguar moved like mist. He had no name in the way humans name things. The monkeys called him Shadow. The frogs simply fell silent when he passed. His coat, midnight rosettes on gold, rippled as he glided through the underbrush. Every step was placed with care, every breath measured. He was not the biggest jaguar in the forest, but his eyes were the sharpest, his senses tuned to the hum of the world. Shadow was a hunter, but on this particular morning, something hunted him. Not a creature of claw or fang, but something stranger. The scent of metal, of oil, of humans. He'd smelled it once before, seasons ago, when two-leggeds came deep into the jungle, leaving behind unnatural things. The forest had taken years to forget their stink. But now it returned, faint but growing, like an old wound remembering pain. Shadow slowed. The morning fog clung to his whiskers as he padded silently through vines and moss, ears twitching. The birds were quiet here. The trees had grown still. Even the insects had fallen into a hush. Something was wrong. Not far away, a capybara family had woken by the river. They were a small herd, 7 in all. The alpha male was graying, his ears tattered from old battles. The mother was stout and calm-eyed. Their young waddled and yawned in the mud, round and soft as sun-warmed stones. Among them was the youngest. Barely a month old, still clumsy, still prone to chasing butterflies and losing his way behind ferns. He was the curious one. The one who wandered. That morning, he did just that. While his siblings squeaked and squabbled over a floating banana peel, he followed a darting blue damselfly up a hillock crowned with orchids. His tiny feet squelched in moss. His nose twitched. And then, snap, he screamed. But the scream died in his throat, cut off by the crushing pressure of rope. The world flipped sideways. He kicked, struggled, but the snare was tight, coarse, bit into his belly like the teeth of a snake. Above him, the trees swayed. And then he was still. The jungle, too, was still. Shadow heard it. He stopped mid-step, muscles coiled. The cry hadn't been loud, but it had been wrong. Not the cry of a hunt. Not the call of mating. It was pain. Panic. Small. He turned toward it. The scent of metal was stronger now, laced with fear musk and capybara fur. He moved quickly, silent as a drifting leaf. Minutes later, he crouched beneath the shadow of a hanging fig tree and looked through the brush. His eyes, golden and unblinking, fell on the scene. The capybara pup lay suspended in a net snare, one leg twisted awkwardly, his side heaving in panic. The trap was crude, ropes and sticks fashioned by human hands, pulled tight when triggered. The scent of boot prints lingered on the nearby dirt. Shadow bared his teeth, but made no sound. Humans had returned. But why here? Why this deep? He glanced at the pup again. Its eyes were closed, its breathing shallow. Left like this, it would die. From the heat. From thirst. From panic. Or worse, a jaguar might find it. One not like Shadow. He stepped forward. The rope smelled of fire and blood. Shadow circled at once, wary of hidden dangers. His shoulder brushed the edge of the clearing, scattering a few dry leaves. The pup stirred weakly. Shadow paused. Something inside him, the part honed for instinct, for the kill, resisted. This was prey. Easy prey. Vulnerable. A meal. But another part, older, deeper, buried under generations of silence, rose to the surface. This was not a hunt. This was something else. He pressed one massive paw against the rope's anchor. Dug his claws into the bark holding the mechanism tight. He pulled. The branch creaked. Snapped. The pup dropped with a thud onto the mossy floor, yelping in pain. But he was free. Shadow stood over him, broad head low, breath warm on the pup's face. The capybara shivered, rolled onto his side. Shadow nudged him with his nose. Once. Twice. Nothing. Then, a twitch. Tiny legs kicked. The pup blinked. Their eyes met. The jaguar's, golden and fathomless. The pup's, wide and liquid with terror. Shadow stepped back, turned, and melted into the trees. The pup didn't move for a long while. His body ached. His leg throbbed. But slowly, he pushed himself up. One wobble. Then two. He sniffed. The jaguar was gone. Only the silence remained. But it wasn't the silence of death. It was calm, like the forest was exhaling. Back near the river, the capybara herd was frantic. The mother called out in hoarse squeaks. The alpha barked toward the trees. Siblings scattered, searching under bushes and behind stones. Then, rustling, a tiny figure emerged from the ferns, limping, covered in leaf dust. There was a moment of shock. And then squeals of joy. The pup was swarmed by snouts and tongues. His mother sniffed every inch of him. His father pressed close, trembling with relief. None of them knew how he'd escaped. None of them saw the golden eyes watching from a branch high above, hidden in shadow, tail twitching once before disappearing once more into the jungle. Far away, back on the trail of boot prints, Shadow followed the human scent, not to hunt but to know. The jungle had changed. It was no longer enough to hide. There were traps in the undergrowth now. And if he didn't guard his jungle, who would? The rains had not come. For days now, the air hung heavy with dry tension, the canopy overhead no longer dripping, the rivers running slower, sluggish with heat. The calls of macaws sounded sharper. The rustle of leaves held a warning. Even the insects, ever present, hummed with a kind of urgency, as if they too felt the shift in the pulse of the forest. Shadow moved through this stillness with purpose. He had followed the scent of humans for 2 nights, tracking where bootprints crushed ferns and broke moss-covered roots, where cigarette ash mingled with bird droppings, and where unnatural sounds echoed faintly into the trees. Metal clinks, muttered voices, low laughter. He did not approach them. Not yet. The memory of the trapped pup still clung to his fur, invisible but present. He could not forget the wide, trembling eyes, the scent of fear and rope. That tiny body left like a lure. Humans didn't trap for survival. Not in this part of the jungle. They trapped for control. And control, Shadow knew, never ended with just one snare. Miles away, at a quiet bend in the river, the rescued capybara lay in tall reeds, healing. His leg was still stiff. A strange ache ran from shoulder to haunch where the rope had dug deep. But he was alive. The rest of the herd doted on him with gentle sniffs and constant watchfulness. He was no longer allowed to wander. His curiosity now watched with quiet fear. His mother rarely let him out of reach. His siblings slept closer. And yet, he dreamed of golden eyes. Not threatening, not cruel. Eyes that had stared at him from the edge of pain and offered something he could not name. Not mercy. He was too small to understand that. Not kinship. The jungle didn't teach such things easily. It was more like guarding. A gaze that had watched, then chosen not to harm. A presence that had come close enough to kill, but instead tore down the rope that held him. The pup, still nameless, still small, remembered that moment as clearly as the pain. And sometimes, at night, when the trees creaked and frogs called to one another, he would turn to the shadows, searching. Shadow crept through the edge of a newly cleared patch of jungle. It had once been dense with Brazil nut trees and bromeliads. Now it was a raw wound. Trunks lay felled like broken bones. The soil, once rich with centuries of rot and bloom, now churned and bare, scarred by tractor tracks. He found the camp at the center. 3 tents, 2 four-wheelers, a fire pit ringed by beer bottles. The men were loud. Their language was not the one of the jungle. Shadow crouched atop a thick branch, unseen, unmoving. He watched, listened, and learned. They were hunters, but not for food. They laid snares and used bait animals, monkeys, baby birds, capybaras, to lure jaguars. Their goal: sell the pelts. The teeth. Sometimes, the whole animal. One man even spoke of a buyer. A foreigner. Rich. Eager for exotic predators. Shadow's eyes narrowed. They weren't just destroying trees. They were destroying balance. That night, rain finally came. But it was thin, hesitant. Not the roaring wall of water the jungle needed. Just enough to slick leaves and whisper through the underbrush. Shadow used it as cover. He moved like a ghost through the edges of the hunter's camp. He found the traps. 5 of them, hidden beneath dead leaves and false trails. He destroyed them, not by brute force, but by knowing where to strike. A paw through the trigger. A swipe to the rope's anchor. Silent sabotage. When the hunters rose the next morning, they found only snapped mechanisms and animal prints too large for anything they wanted to catch. One of them muttered about ghosts. Another, more fearful, said the jungle was watching. He wasn't wrong. Back at the river bend, the baby capybara's limp had improved. He could now wade again, though not far, and had resumed chasing butterflies, under strict supervision. He had changed. Quieter, more cautious, but also more aware. Once, when a hawk's shadow passed overhead, he didn't just freeze, he turned toward it, measuring its path. Another time, when a snake coiled near the family's favorite wallow, he was the first to spot it, giving a shrill bark of warning. His siblings began to follow his lead. And at night, he would still stare into the darkness, waiting for the golden eyes. They never came, not yet, but somehow, he felt they were near. 3 days later, the fire began. Shadow smelled the smoke before he saw the glow. It was not the natural burn of dry leaves in summer. It was gasoline-fed, a line of fire arcing in a half-moon across the western jungle, cutting through vines and root systems like a knife. Humans had done this. Whether to clear land or drive animals into traps, Shadow did not know. He didn't care. He ran, not away, but toward the river, toward the bend. The fire moved fast. Carried by the wind, it jumped dry branches and low-hanging moss, twisting like a serpent through the heart of the forest. Animals fled in all directions. Monkeys screeched. Tapirs crashed through thickets. Birds exploded from trees in flurries of feathers. The capybara family felt the panic before they saw the flames. The mother barked. The father herded the young. They bolted into the river, swimming downstream with clumsy urgency. But the youngest, the once trapped pup, hesitated. The smoke reminded him of rope. Of fear. He looked once toward the jungle, toward the wall of smoke swallowing green. And he saw them. Golden eyes. A jaguar, sleek and massive, stood on a stone outcrop above the burning slope. Unblinking, unmoving, the capybara froze. Then, as if drawn by something older than memory, he turned and followed his family. Behind him, Shadow watched. Only when the pup disappeared into the river did he turn toward the fire and vanish into the smoke. That night, the fire died. So did the hunters' camp, burned to ash. No bodies were found, just claw marks in a tent wall. And 3 torn traps left in a neat line, like trophies. The fire had scorched more than trees. The jungle was still recovering, though the rains had finally returned in a long, cleansing torrent. For days, the forest drank in silence, blackened earth softening, charred bark shedding like old skin, green slowly curling from the ashes. Life in the Amazon never truly dies, it waits, watches, returns. But some scars take longer to fade. The capybara pup still flinched at the smell of smoke. His leg no longer hurt, and he no longer trailed behind the others. In fact, he often led the herd now, head held high, eyes more alert than most. He could read the river's current like an old story. He could smell rain before it came. He knew which trees whispered danger. He had grown, but he had not forgotten. Not the snare, not the fire, not the jaguar. He still dreamed of those golden eyes, eyes that appeared not in rage, but with purpose. With power, with choice. And sometimes, when the moon was full and the wind was low, he thought he could feel a presence in the canopy above. Not watching to hunt, but guarding. Shadow had not rested. Since the fire, he had patrolled every broken path, every clearing, every scent that didn't belong. The jungle had changed, but so had he. The human camp had been destroyed. Their tools gone, their snares shattered, but one scent remained, the foreign one. Expensive leather, sweet smoke, metallic oil. Shadow had smelled it once, near the heart of the fire. It hadn't belonged to the hunters, not the ones who lit fires and set traps like amateurs. This was different, sharper, cleaner, organized. Now, weeks later, it had returned. A new camp had been set, smaller, but more secure. Hidden between 2 ridges, near a waterfall that drowned out most sounds. A tall white tent gleamed beneath the trees. Solar panels glinted like beetle shells in the sun. Inside sat a man, pale skin, sunglasses, a briefcase and a laptop. He spoke to no one, but 3 locals guarded the perimeter. They weren't hunters, they were professionals. Tranquilizer guns, radios, camouflage, and cages. Two of them. One already held a howler monkey, sedated, curled in the corner, breathing slow. The other stood empty, but on its side, stenciled in bold black, Panthera onca, live, handle with extreme caution. Shadow watched from the trees. He'd followed the scent for 2 days. Smelled the fear on the monkey. Smelled the hunger in the guards. And he had smelled him, the one who never touched the dirt, who moved like he didn't belong, whose breath carried no fear at all. Shadow did not growl. He waited. At the same time, downstream by the mangrove thickets, the capybara herd had moved to higher ground. Something in the water had changed. Fish swam away faster. Frogs had fallen silent. The oldest members of the herd grunted uneasily, sensing something unnatural. The pup, now leaner, steadier, still curious, wandered to the riverbank and watched. There, just beneath the surface, floated something alien. A fragment of plastic, bright orange, with jagged edges and a corner of wire. He sniffed it once, and froze. The smell was faint, but he knew it. It was the same as the rope that had once dug into his belly. The same as the smoke that chased his family downriver. The same as the men. He turned, and without knowing why, began to walk upstream. Night fell. In the jungle, night is not silence, it's a different kind of song. But tonight, the animals fell quiet. Something moved. Something wrong. Shadow saw them before they saw him. 2 guards. Quiet, cautious, armed with nets and darts. Moving in wide loops. Checking the bait cage. Whispering into radios. They thought they were alone. They weren't. Shadow leapt from the tree above like a whisper of death. The first didn't scream. He didn't have time. Just a gasp and silence. The second ran. Shadow didn't chase. He turned instead toward the white tent. Toward the man. The capybara pup crested the hill just as the wind shifted. The smell hit him like a memory, chemical, blood, sweat, something sharp underneath. The stink of the cage. The human stink. The scent of the jaguar. He stopped. From the ridge, he could see the camp, a mess of canvas, equipment, wires, and him, a shape in motion, not clumsy like humans, not fast like monkeys, a shadow with golden eyes, moving like water over stone. The pup ducked low, watched. Inside the tent, the man clicked shut his briefcase. He didn't hear the flap open behind him. Didn't hear the breath in the dark. When he turned, he saw only gold. Eyes like fire. Body like carved obsidian. He froze. Shadow didn't lunge. He didn't need to. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until the man's back hit the metal cage. He dropped his briefcase. Fumbled for his radio. But then, the sound. A small squeak. From the edge of the camp. The jaguar turned. So did the man. A capybara pup stood in the clearing, mud on his fur, but standing firm. His wide eyes met the jaguar's. He didn't flinch. The man saw the moment. Saw the recognition. The connection. And for the first time, his mouth opened, not in command, but in awe. "What are you?" he whispered. Shadow growled. Not loud. Not furious. Just enough. Enough to make the man run. And when he did, the forest swallowed him. The monkey was freed first. Shadow pawed the cage open with practiced ease. The capybara stood beside him, as if he too were waiting for something. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The night held their silence like treasure. Then Shadow turned, melting into the dark. The pup watched him go. Then turned back toward the river. Weeks passed. The forest healed. New vines curled over fallen logs. Flowers bloomed where plastic once lay. Birdsong returned. And so did balance. The human camp never returned. The man never came back. But some nights, on a wide ridge above the bend in the river, a jaguar would sit watching the stars, breath even, tail flicking slowly. And once, just once, a grown capybara came and sat beside him, close, but not touching. The silence was deep. And the bond, though wordless, could be felt in every leaf. They had seen each other. They had chosen, not prey, not predator, but something else, something only the jungle could understand.